Recently on TV, they created a TV movie called A World Without Oil, in which they presupposed that all the oil disappeared overnight, that none more were pumped, also all the wells went dry. And the premise was interesting, but unfortunately it's a fantasy world type premise. Oil is like any other resource. The resource, as you use it, depletes. And as you use the resource and it gets fewer and fewer, the cost of that resource goes up. And eventually the resource is too expensive to be used in the way it was used in the beginning. This is true for all resources. Renewable resources like trees and food and grown products may have a little bit more resiliency because you can regrow them, but even then there's a peak level of growth that you can achieve with those products. So let's talk just about oil. Now, a lot of people who are worrying about the end of the oil like to think that, put it up as if there's no alternatives to oil. And I kind of look at oil and gasoline as being like the wood or the coal that were used before it, or like horses in the case of cars. Now, in the beginning, we used wood for a lot of our fuel supply. And as wood forests became smaller and smaller and the resource became more expensive to transport and move from one place to another, an alternative, coal, came along. Now, oil and gasoline, we're just focused on gasoline part of oil. Oil was first used to replace, as a cheap replacement for whale oil in lamps. Gasoline was actually a waste product of oil. They'd throw it away. It was worthless until they realized they could use it for something. And now it's a cornerstone of our culture and our society. Our plastics are made as a derivative from it, and that plastics are actually a waste product of oil and gas. And we use that in everything nowadays. So we actually use a great deal of this resource. But like any resource, since this is a mined resource, it will have a limit. It will have a point where the acquiring of the resource gets so expensive that it's not really useful in the private sector. So what's going to happen? Well, there are alternatives out there to oil. You have hydrogen, you have natural gas, you have biofuels, you have electric. What's going to happen is they're sitting in the wings right now. These things are sitting in the wings right now for multiple reasons. Mostly due to the cost to make them or their efficiency or how far you can go on them. But as the cost of gasoline goes up, let's say it costs you $1,000 to fill up your gas tank, are you really going to drive very far? You might very well buy a golf cart, electric golf cart, for your day-to-day use and only use your car for long travels. If you have a car at all. As example, cars didn't just pop into this world. The gas stations suddenly didn't appear out of thin air. The first cars were very inefficient. And the carriage industry and the horse industry probably put all sorts of ads and advertisements out to try to discourage people from buying cars. They're noisy, they break down, they're dangerous, etc., etc., etc. They're wasteful. They probably had a grocery list of reasons why you shouldn't buy a car. But where are the carriage industry and the horse industry today? Do we ride horses to work? No, we all drive cars. What happened? Did you think the first car that came along had a gas station in every street corner for the fill up? No. The first cars that were sold, they had to buy gasoline and store it at their houses. It had to be shipped to them and stored at their houses. They didn't have gas stations. It was only after a certain number of cars were bought that somebody said, you know what, I can make a living selling gasoline to these people so they don't have to store it at home. And then you probably just had one gas station for the whole town, which was fine because you had so few cars in the first place. But as cars got more and more popular, more and more gas stations were built, and even the roads started to be improved to be better suited for the cars. And the end result was we have what we have today. So when people say, well, hydrogen car won't work because where are all the hydrogen stations? The gas stations don't have hydrogen. I'm sorry. The first hydrogen car is going to require you to have one at home until there's enough filling station or tank or whatever at home to fill the car. And eventually, when you get enough of these cars in the market, they're going to start opening stations and including it in the stations the same way. Same way with natural gas cars. Same way with electric cars. There's going to be a natural switchover as these become more affordable. Let's say gasoline gets so expensive it's $1,000 to fill up your gas tank. All right, and you have a choice of $1,000 to fill up your gas tank or buy that or a golf cart for $10,000 or $5,000. Well, what's going to happen is you're going to buy your golf cart and you're going to drive your golf cart to the grocery store and back. And if everyone's buying golf carts, someone in the area is going to say, look, you know, I could service those golf carts. And you know what? I think I can make something a little better than a golf cart. And they'll make something more improved than a golf cart that can actually do all these chores better than the golf cart will. And it'll be more car-like because the car was developed with those ideas in mind. And eventually they'll build that vehicle up. Will the first electric car, first hydrogen car, or first natural gas car be super efficient and perfect? Of course not. The first regular car wasn't super efficient or perfect. It's going to take a while to develop the best vehicle for that purpose. So the long and short of it is that change has to happen naturally. What happens when you try to force change on things is you create artificial realities, and artificial realities don't last. That's the problem. You can block off all the natural resources you want and say, oh, you can't look for oil here, even though there's enough oil to last 1,000 years in that spot. It's artificial because you've blocked that off, and it won't last. It only lasts as long as the government lasts, or as long as that barrier exists. But governments don't last forever, and eventually people are going to access that resource. Especially the more expensive the item gets, the more people are going to call to access that resource. If you're paying $1,000 per gallon and you're told that in this national park, that land that they bought years ago, contains 1,000 years worth of gasoline, and it could drop gas prices down to $1 a gallon, do you think any politician would have the power to stop the people from getting at that gas? You think any environmental group would have the power to stop the people from getting to that gas? At $1,000 a gallon, they might be stringing the environmentalists up by a noose if they try to stop them. You know, because they're desperate to get that gas. So long and short of it is, artificial ones create conflict, create problems, and ultimately do not block progress. Progress happens naturally. As oil gets more expensive, we'll switch to something else. We already have things waiting in the wings. So there's no real need to force it, no need to artificially tax things to make it more expensive to drive people into what you deem to be the solution. There you go. Let it happen naturally. Don't worry about it. It'll be okay. It really will. Thank you very much. Have yourself a good day, and God bless.